All right, Aaron Lieber, welcome to Wild Ideas Worth Living.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm so excited to have you because you were a huge inspiration for me starting this podcast, which is crazy. I mean, what year is it that we went to Jaws?
We went to Jaws in 2016. Yeah, January 4th.
January 4th of 2016, and the end of that year, I was like, I'm going to start a podcast. But it was really after that moment. I don't know if you said this to me or if I experienced it, but it was your philosophy of putting yourself in a bigger playing field and then watching Bethany Hamilton put herself on, I think, the biggest playing field in surfing ever that really catapulted my desire to be like, you know what, I can do my dream too.
Yeah, I think the thing I remember saying to you was pick something and stick to it.
And the focusing thing is always hard for me.
Yeah,
so I appreciate it.
I think you're so talented at so many different things, but you just hadn't picked that thing for yourself. And so when you picked podcasting, I was super excited for you.
Well, thank you. So the cool thing is this podcast is on you, and I'm excited to hear your story. I don't think a lot of people know your story. I mean, this film, Unstoppable, is going to come out pretty much the week this podcast goes live, and your life is probably going to change because it's a huge, biggest film you've ever done. But I'd love for you to tell people just how you got your start as a filmmaker.
Yeah, I started just with a camera shooting my friends skateboarding, and my teachers, I got so lucky growing up, my teachers in high school would be like, do you want to write a paper or make a film about like a subject or whatever it was at that time in school? So obviously I always chose making a video. So graduated high school not knowing how to write a paper. And
Great.
got to college, got a D on my first English paper, and I've never gotten a D in my life. And so that was a rude awakening. But it was so cool to have at a young age these handheld cameras that were a couple $100. I'll admit that we stole Final Cut Pro from our high school so that I could edit at home. So it was just a little
You borrowed it.
Yeah, we did borrow it.
Yeah,
but,
we didn't steal it.
Yeah, borrowed it. Yeah, so we borrowed it from the school for a day so I could install it on my computer, and just kind of was on this journey to teach myself. YouTube and those kind of free tutorials started becoming a thing through college.
What year did you graduate high school so we can kind of talk about your age?
Yeah, so I graduated high school in 2004. I'm 33 years old right now.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of were in the age where you grew up with a cell phone. Kind of. Yeah.
I mean, so I got my first smartphone when I'm graduating college.
Ah, interesting. Yeah. Okay, so actually you kind of grew up with both, but you grew up with film.
Yeah.
Which is huge. And how did you develop your love of telling stories through, film?
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't originally even have the intent to tell stories. When I'm younger, I was watching Taylor Steele films, which were like high action, and like these Skateboard Zero films, and a bunch of those types of films. I definitely obviously watched Endless Summer, Bruce Brown, and Warren Miller films as well. But when you're younger, you just want to get out there and do something. So my whole thing was like, I want to travel and like be a pro surfer, but I'm terrible at surfing. So a camera was like literally the lens that I could go and do these things. And so that was my original intent, was to just make performance surf films. I just thought it was so cool. And at that time, there was a market for them.
Yeah, so you grew up in Southern California, surfing, skateboarding, I'm guessing snowboarding or skiing?
Snowboarding.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you just always loved it. So, but then you said you started as an intern.
Yeah, so in my junior year in college, I was going to study abroad, and it ended up being really expensive, and so I was like, okay, I'm not doing that. And my mom was like, well, you should get an internship at a surf magazine. And I was like, that's a great idea, Mom.
Moms are smart. Your mom especially is pretty wise.
Moms are the best. It's like one of those things my mom would say something to me, or she says things even to this day, and then the initial response is like, you're wrong, but you know she's right, like always, which is so annoying. But yeah, so she suggested getting an internship, and I emailed a bunch of magazines, and Justin Cote got back to me, and I did an interview, and yeah, I started as an intern at Transworld Surf when they were based in Oceanside, and as soon as I got in there, I learned what he was doing, but I wanted to make videos. And that was kind of like, the internet just kind of started becoming a thing. So I would go to contests and make like highlight videos and recap videos before anybody else was doing that within the surf industry. So Transworld Surf was so excited because they're getting hundreds and hundreds of free videos for their own platform. So that's kind of how I started getting into the industry. It was just at the bottom.
Yeah, I feel like being an intern is one of the most underrated things you could ever do. Like, that was the advice a journalism professor gave to me my freshman year. He's like, go intern at your local paper. And I did, and they gave me my own adventure column, and I had to write a daily or weekly column about adventurers and surfers, and I still do the same job today that I did at 19 years old, and I got paid to do it. And these internships, the cool thing about internships is you can do anything. I mean, if you hustle, you're allowed to work on a lot of big projects. I think at any place, right?
Yeah, I think being an internship is just so overlooked. I mean, that's the first piece of advice I give anybody wanting to do anything in their life. Go get an internship.
Even if you have to work for free. You'll learn 100%.
A lot. You should work for free.
Yeah.
Why are you going to get paid? I mean, if you
sometimes you get paid.
Sure, if you can get paid. I
mostly work for free.
Yeah, if you can get paid, great. But you have no skills and knowledge at that point in your life. You think you do. You're really overly confident at 19 years old. I remember being that human. But you should just, the opportunity, the thing is you're getting paid in the networking that you're going to build and the resources that you have behind you. So yeah, sure, it might not be monetary, but there's no way my career would be where it is now without that internship.
And you get to learn from people better than you, and you get to take risks and fail without a ton of consequences, because you're not, it's like if you get fired, oh well.
Yeah, well, you can't even get fired.
Yeah.
I mean, usually they're month-long or maybe 3-month-long internships. So,
Yeah, that's great. So why surfing? Why? I mean, I get it. You love surfing, but you immediately started making surf films, and then quickly transitioned to making surf films about women.
Yeah.
Which a lot of guys were not doing at the time.
Yeah, I think two things. One is the ocean just has this healing and allure that you just can't. Once you're in it, it's hard to leave. So the ocean just means a lot to me and so many surfers, and so I think that was the initial draw. And then I made my first film, The Pursuit, with all these up and coming, 18 to 23-year-old male surfers. And when I finished that film, I'll never forget, I was premiering it at my college, and this lady raises her hand and says, "So why are there no girls in your movies?" And I was 22 at the time and didn't have an answer. And I was like, that's a great question. That was, what do I say? And so that stuck out in my head. And, about a year later, I got this job working for Nike, and they were already kind of making this film, Leave a Message, with all these top girls. So I got really fortunate. I kind of fell into this space and met Carissa Moore and Lakey Peterson and these amazing women. And then that's kind of, for me, the light bulb went off, oh wow, there's this whole other space of really talented surfers that are so fun to work with, and no one's doing it. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so first of all, if you're listening and you don't know these names, these women are now the top women in the world at surfing. Lakey Peterson, Carissa Moore, and at the time they were sponsored by Nike. So how did you get into Nike?
So I just, through the internship in the film, became friends with all these other filmmakers within the industry, and a buddy of mine was the guy working for a filmmaker at Nike, and he wanted to move on with his life, and so he's like, hey, I'm gonna quit, do you want to try out for this job with Nike? And of course I'm like, yeah, I want that job. So he quit, and I came on for a month-long period as a test trial. And after a month, they loved working with me, so I stayed on with the job. And like you said, Carissa Moore is now a 3-time world champ. Lakey Peterson's number 2 in the world right now. So these girls at that time, though, were, Lakey was 15 at that time, and Carissa, I think, would have been 17. So I really got this opportunity to work with, and even on the male side, Gabriel Mendina, Julian Wilson, Kilo Handino. I worked with all these up-and-coming kids, and so I got this really cool landscape to see what the future was like, and I saw the women were just as interesting as the men, but no one was pointing the camera at them.
That's so interesting. Really quickly, sorry we have to pause. That noise, is that going to affect things?
I can't hear because I don't have headphones.
I don't hear it in here. I'm going to give this to you. This guy's the pro, so sometimes we let people who are professionals at audio. I can't hear it. Can you?
I can hear it, but because it's a consistent white noise, it's not like
okay, we can edit it out.
It's not a clank.
Okay.
It's not a clank. So the consistent white noise like that can be extracted pretty easily.
Okay, cool.
Hard clanks are harder.
Okay.
I have a guy who can do that for you if you need, but
okay, cool. Sorry guys, a little technical difficulties
we'll
sometimes.
Just edit that out.
We have with that. So but not only, so you talked a little bit about, working with these females. It must have been like so different working with them, but you also once told me, or you told me a couple times, you come from a family of really strong women.
Yeah, my mom's a really strong woman, and my grandma, who just passed away last year, she was the head of education for Arizona for 12 years. She ran for governor, she ran for Senate, both times losing out to she lost to John McCain at one point. And then when she lost to him, she ended up actually, even though he's on the other side of the aisle, she helped him campaign as well. So she's been, and in her house she has photos with Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Jimmy Carter, basically every major social person in the last 50 years they were friends with.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a household, going to their house and rubbing, kind of just seeing those people around.
Yeah.
Which was really cool. And so yeah, I think when I saw this opportunity to work with women and then had that backdrop behind my own life, I was like, okay, this is awesome.
You were like a 23-year-old male, and at the time, I don't know, I just remember when I was 23, what 23-year-old males were like working with women. I mean, you had just such a different approach towards working with women. How did you stay professional, I guess is what I'm asking you.
Yeah, I mean,
because these girls are gorgeous in their bikinis.
Yeah, but I get it. I think being a young 23-year-old male, it could be, I guess, a slippery slope, someone might say, but I kind of see them all as like my little sisters.
Yeah.
So it is a mental choice. You can look at it that way, or you can go, oh, actually they're just like these amazing athletes, and this is my job, and I either take it professionally or I get fired. Those are my choices.
Well, I always appreciate how you showcase women, because I remember doing a consulting job with a surf company, and the filmmakers continually showed this one girl's, every time she did a bottom turn and a thong, that's all you saw. And I was like, or a duck dive, and I'm like, that's great, she has a good butt, but yeah. I just want to see her surf, she rips.
Yeah, it was a cognitive choice for sure. When I was just, and you look at any of my work, you won't see that. You won't see butts, you don't see sexuality. If you see, if a female athlete wants to wear whatever bikini she wants to wear, that's totally fine, but I'm not going to intentionally shoot her in a sexual way. I'm always going to shoot her in an athletic way, and if the sexuality comes out because of who she is, fine. I'm not here to say that's right or wrong.
Some girls like to twerk on the beach.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah. I'm not trying, but what the intention was to try to focus on athletic ability and give whatever I was doing in that space an elevated boost, because the sexuality is going to be done by some other photographer or some other videographer. So my focus was to just do, and to be proud of that work, right? And I have a mom and a sister, and maybe I'll have a daughter someday. So again, it's not like I want to write those people off, but it's just kind of been done a lot.
Yeah.
So how do you try to do something different? And that was really important to me.
I think all of us, as a female, I've always appreciated that. It was so exciting watching Leave a Message, I'm older than these girls, and I was like, yeah, those girls have been around when I was younger. I wanted to surf with them. They would be my buddies. And then you did a message just with Lakey Peterson, which was awesome. I'm sure a huge feat for you. And then you found Bethanys Story.
Yeah.
So how did you find Bethany Hamilton? I know everybody has always known about Bethany Hamilton's story, but you found a different story that you wanted to tell. So talk to me about how you met her and how you found this story you really wanted to tell. And we can talk about Lakey's film too, if that works.
Yeah, I'll just kind of brush on all of it. Leave a Message led to Lakey's film, and Lakey's film, Lakey was the first girl to do it. Lakey Peterson, who's number 2 in the world right now, was the first girl to do an air in surfing competition. And then the following year, she did an air reverse. Which is when you, can you explain it? Yeah, do you want me to?
No, you explain it, I'm gonna
air reverse is just basically going into the air and doing at least a 180 degree turn in the air, and then landing and spinning around, so it ends up being a full 360. So she was the first girl back-to-back years to do that, and at that time she was the youngest girl to qualify. So I followed her journey on tour her first year and the struggles of being a young woman kind of in the big leagues. And then I edited that film in 3 weeks, which was crazy.
Whoa.
16 hours a day. Yeah. But yeah, it ended up doing good. It was like number 2 on iTunes Sports, and Netflix licensed it. Did pretty good. And so during that time, I went on a trip with Carissa Moore, who's now the 3-time world champ, and Bethany, and I first met her. And then about 6 months later, Bethany came on a trip with Lakey when we were finishing up Lakey's film. And I think Lakey had just finished maybe top 5 in the world, and Bethany was outclassing her surfing wise. We were at this left point, and Lakey was surfing good. I obviously don't want to throw her under the bus by any means, but Bethany was just like throwing buckets and getting barreled. She was just surfing on a level that I didn't know she could surf at. I knew she was a good surfer, but not, you know. And so I kind of just like soft pitched an idea to her. I was like, hey, like it'd be really cool if you really just showed the world what a great surfer you were. And I didn't pitch myself. I just told her, like, I just suggestion, like, you should do this. And then 8 months later, I finished Lakey's film, and Bethany texted me, like, watched it and really loved it. She's like, let's do something. And so I was like, okay. So the original intention of Bethany Hamilton Unstoppable was really just to highlight her as an amazing athlete, and that's what we started out to do, and the film evolved.
So, I mean, Bethany Hamilton is an incredible athlete, but most people didn't totally know that. Most people know Bethany Hamilton from the movie Soul Surfer, or the fact that when she was 13 years old, she lost her left arm to a tiger shark.
Yeah. And
she's been on all sorts of shows since that, from The Amazing Race to, she's been on Oprah, Ellen, probably The Today Show. And you're like, yeah, but there's this other story.
Yeah, I mean, I would just categorize her as she's been categorized as a survivor of a shark attack and a Christian. But she's so much more than all that, and I think we all are.
I didn't even think of those two things when
those are the boxes that she's been put into. But you're right, she was
put into those two boxes because she did a lot of speaking at churches and Yeah, and
so people just want to, I mean, it's just human nature, I think, a little bit, to like try to understand things, and so the boxes she was put into is shark attack survivor, you know, surfer for sure, but not world-class athlete, and a Christian. And so the film really tackles the idea of adaptation and perception, and what it means to kind of be a woman in 2019. Bethany wasn't really involved in that aspect of it. She's just going to be her. That's her job, is to just be herself. But, through the process of making this film, she gets married, she has a kid, and there's struggles in that. And she's still an athlete. And so I really wanted to just be a fly on the wall in her world and give a female athlete who has these big narratives and is well known the opportunity to tell her story the way any other male athlete would have, and have the cinematography and the sound and the music and all these layers that I feel like are applied to male films, to a female film. If you really take a step back and look at the space of female narratives, I can name less than 5 that are good, that have been that have been given the time and energy that they deserve.
Like which ones?
Serena Williams has her series on HBO.
I can't think of any.
Yeah.
Well, I like Billie Jean King's story, but that was an adaptation into.
Yeah. I mean, there's a new one coming out with the Big Wave Surfer Girls. I forget the name of the film.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be, I think that will be good. And then there are a few more I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but who's the skier? Julia
Mancuso?
No, not Julia, but the other girl. She just retired.
Lindsey Vonn, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I didn't love her film, but she had a film. There's just not, again, so you strip it all back. There's just,
I can't think of a lot either, so that's why I was asking you.
Yeah. So on the scale of what this film is, like, it's hard for me to point to any film other than a male type of film, like Shane McConkey, or, even a Free Solo. Like, there's so many kind of outdoor space films, Riding Giants, all these films that are, Dogtown Z-Boys, all this kind of stuff, right? So Bethany's film, if you take away the shark and you take away the faith, it's the only film that I could think of that really highlights a woman as a top level athlete that's done in the way that those films were done.
Because you wanted to make it not just a film that was just like out on iTunes the next day, or that was distributed by a surf brand. You're like, no, I want this in theaters, nationwide, so everybody could see her.
Yeah, I feel like it's super important for young women to see themselves on a big screen, and the only way to do that is to make sure it's an authentic, non-branded film, even though I did have to work with brands to get the financing done.
Yeah, we'll talk about how you did it, because I mean, from Kickstarter, work with brands later, but I'm more interested in, right now, working with Bethany had to have been a trip. She's really different than anybody I've hung out with. First of all, when we spent some time together at Jaws, or going to Jaws, I did not surf Jaws, I was just in a boat. I would never even paddle out there. I didn't realize she had one arm until right before she got in the water. She just turned to me. I was just happened to be the only female on the boat, and she just said, "Hey, can you help me put my hair in a ponytail?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, duh." But she could do everything. Like, it was a non-issue. She could change her baby's diaper. There was no "Hey, can you help with this?" Ever. What's it like hanging out with Bethany, and how is she kind of different than hanging out with other people?
Yeah, when I first started hanging out with her, I think you try to be kind of overly helpful, and she just says no to everything. And then eventually, if she warms up to you enough, there's a few things that she does want help with, and so she'll ask you when she needs it. But yeah, for the most part, she's totally self-sufficient. She's got it. So, and you really start to notice that she has this body language of her shoulders are back, which shows confidence.
Yeah, she does. She is tall.
And she's tall, and she's very sure of herself. And so through that body language, she creates this illusion of not having two arms, right? I think it's almost like a mind game. I forget all the time. So just the other day, where she was showing me this exercise, and I was doing the exercise with one arm, and she just starts dying laughing because she's like, "No, Aaron, you have to do it with both arms." And I was like, "Oh, I was just mimicking you." So I forget all the time that because she just carries herself in a way that is very dynamic and interesting, right? So part of making this film was can I take the audience on a journey where they forget as well?
How interesting. So what are some of the stories you really enjoyed telling about Bethany? I'll just tell you mine really quick.
Yeah,
before I ask
yours. Yeah.
So I really first of all, I didn't realize I always realized Bethany was just a total stud and a great athlete, but I didn't realize how good she was as a little kid right away, and what a daredevil she was. And I really loved the relationship she had with her best friend, Alana Blanchard, because in the movie Soul Surfer, her friendship with Alana is portrayed in a very Hollywood way, and they go their separate ways, and Alana's into modeling, and Bethany's not into that, and she goes to the church. And you don't show that at all. In your movie, I'm not going to totally give it away, but you showcase a little girl and her best friend just charging in the surf, pushing each other, dressing up as little dogs, playing soccer. And it reminded me of my relationship with my best friend, who had an older brother, and would get me to skateboard down big hills that I didn't want any business doing, but because she was doing it, I would do it. And she was my Bethany Hamilton friend. Yeah. Bethany just was always charging, and then she ends up winning. She's the champ at a young age.
Yeah.
So talk to me about Bethany really quickly as a kid.
Yeah, I think that's one of those hidden gems in the film, that people don't realize that she was on this path to be a world champ. She would have qualified at the same time as Steph Gilmore, who's a 7-time world champ. And I don't think Steph maybe would have won as many, because Bethany was a presence and a force to reckon with. And you'll see in the film, she's twice the size of all of her
Yeah, she was
peers.
tall.
She was tall and fearless and really had that mindset. And
she also just loves to train. Her coach would say run once, and she'd be like, "Can I do it twice?"
Yeah. She was just such a workhorse, and just wanted it and was so hungry. And I think that some of those things, obviously I discover because I didn't know her then, through the course of gathering 500 hours of archive from her family.
That must have been so fun.
Yeah, so fun. But yeah, those little nuggets are just so cool to showcase, because again, I just, that how you related to the film was the intent. there's so many young girls out there that don't have something like that to relate to, and I think it's so powerful and meaningful. So I'm really stoked to have had the opportunity, because it's just rare, and I think it encourages more young girls to like have a best friend and to push each other the way that men have been doing for centuries, right? So it's kind of like just this kind of scratching the surface of what the next generation of women athletes are going to look like.
So then, you don't go too into the shark attack in the movie. And I mean, the shark attack story has been told like over and over and over again, and I don't even like hearing it or watching it. Like kind of, it just makes me cringe. You see it, you know it happened, whatever. How did you handle that, and then the aftermath of the shark attack? Like, how did you handle telling that story without kind of showing it, telling it?
Yeah, I mean, so I think,
because media always wants to know about that, and it's.
I think what I try to do through the whole process of making the film was internalize how Bethany feels about everything, and then tell the story that way. So I really got to know her really well, all of her little quirks and all these different things. And so I think the way it's told in the film, to the best of the ability, is how she perceived the moment in time and how quickly she moved on, and trying to do it in a way where it's still emotional, it's still an inciting incident, it's still very important to her arc as a story, as a human, but it's not the only element to her and who she is. And, I feel like the way we did it was just, it was a moment, but it doesn't define her in a negative way that maybe people want to kind of, and everyone wants to know, like, what happened? Like, tell us about it. And you're like, well, imagine being in a car accident and then being asked about it for the rest of your life. That's kind of like how it's annoying. So I wanted to show that angst, right? So there's this stuff with media in the film, and so the whole, I wanted to take people on an immersive journey. Like, you're on this journey with her. So I'm the director and all this stuff, but really, like, what I try to do is like, imagine if Bethany was directing her own film, what it would look like, and that's kind of the way I approached everything.
So Annie, if we haven't played this clip yet, now is the time to insert the scene with Bethany where a media guy asks her, like, did you know you would surf again? Or she's like, are you going to surf again?
I think I know.
And she's like, yeah, do I?
It's Chris Como.
Do I think? That's Chris Como, funny. He's like, he asked her, are you going to surf again? She's like, do I think? I know. And it's just so, like, you're like, yeah, you tell him,
and that interview is the week after she lost her arm.
Wow. That's so crazy. So then the week after, then there's like 4 weeks after, 6 weeks after, tell me some of the things that happened right after, like her surfing accomplishments.
Yeah, I mean, so in the film we had to pick what we could keep, but about 2 months after she had lost her arm, she was on the Big Island competing and ended up making the finals in that event, and people were in tears. It was just like this crazy moment. So yeah, she got back in the water 4 weeks later, and was competing 2 months later, and then she got second place at NSSA Nationals 9 months later, and then a year after that she won it. So it was like this really fast ramp up back to.
I'm gonna have to ask you if we can play some of that clip from, like, I think it was, I wrote it down somewhere, like minute 22 to like the NSSAs. They're just such a beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll just get the studio sent over.
It was so good. So she's a star. So let's talk about. Hold on a second. Okay. Yeah, Bethany. I mean, you've talked a little bit about why people should care about Bethanys story. I mean, it's so remarkable. So not only did she, after the shark attack, go on to surf and beat everybody despite only having one arm, which, by the way, there's some things with surfing that would be really hard with one arm. Paddling, duck diving. And her dad had a solution that was really interesting in helping her duck dive under waves. So duck diving, for those of you who don't know, is waves come in and they're really powerful, and to get through them, you have to physically put your hand down and push the board underneath the wave. And to do that with one arm, like, I've tried, and I can't do it. After I hung out with Bethany, I just kept trying to paddle with one arm at my local break, and I just flailed. Yeah.
I think it's a really great, because Bethany's language is action, not words. So I think in life you're faced with two choices: do or don't do. And her choice was obviously to do. So I think if you lost your arm and you really loved surfing, you would just figure it out. You would just keep doing it until you figure it out. And that's what she did. So, sure, we have 2 arms, so for us to try to go do it really quickly is impossible, but I actually would challenge you, if you focused on it for like a week straight, you would probably figure it out, because you love the sport of surfing so much, right? So she just loved surfing to the point where it didn't matter what it was going to take. She wasn't going to give up on her hopes and dreams. And I think that's just such a great lesson for anybody facing a mental issue or a physical one, or whatever it may be. You have 2 choices. And sure, there's maybe a lot of gray area, but at the end of the day, there's 2 choices. Yes or no. Those are your 2 choices.
Yeah, it's cool. So did hang out there rub off on you?
Yeah. I mean, definitely making this film, I had to like become unstoppable a little bit. There's so many different challenges making a movie, and to be honest, making a female narrative sport film is not what people, I think people are like, oh, Bethany Hamilton, it's gonna be so easy to do X, Y, and Z, and it's just not. She's still a female and she's still an athlete, and those spaces are definitely being more looked at now than ever before, but the money is not the same as what's being put into male films, and so I definitely had my challenges.
Okay, let's talk about that. So to make this film, I mean, you started with I just remember I saw this little Kickstarter go up, and Bethenny was gonna make this movie with this cute young guy, and it was really cute little Kickstarter video, but it wasn't big time then, and you got a ton of Kickstarter supporters.
Yeah.
So tell me about your because a lot of people listening want to do a Kickstarter campaign, and you have a good story about pretty fast success with Kickstarter.
Yeah, well, Bethany has a built-in audience, right, of fans that want to support her, and so we had raised a little bit of money through her sponsorships, but we kind of ran out of that quickly, and so we turned to Kickstarter, hey, let's try this. And so yeah, we set the goal of $60,000 to, at that point, the idea of the film was like a 15-minute film, a little bit of narrative, and then action is her surfing really hardcore,
$60,000 is not a lot when it comes to making a film.
No, but I wasn't gonna pay myself. I was just doing it because I loved it. Yeah, and so but then we ended up, in 4 days we hit $60,000, and
4 days to achieve your Kickstarter campaign. That's no joke.
Yeah, and then we went all the way up to we ended up at 116,000, which was great.
Wow.
And then I had a few random celebrities kind of reach out and just donate money behind the scenes, which was pretty intense. Or not intense, but it was really cool.
Surreal?
Yeah, it was surreal. That's a better word. Yeah, it was very surreal.
Oh, interesting.
And some random celebrities, which I won't name because they didn't want to be named.
Was it random, or were people who had interacted with Bethany?
Totally random.
Wow.
One of the biggest musicians in the world. Yeah.
How interesting.
And I guess his assistant who I dealt with, I guess I just said he, but
it's okay. I still have no idea who it was.
Yeah, so his assistant reached out, and I guess he's got a chunk of money that he just gives the causes that he likes every year.
Wow.
And so he saw our Kickstarter and just donated to it behind the scenes, and doesn't want credit, doesn't want anything.
But he's not even listed in the Kickstarter contributors.
Not listed, yeah.
At the end of the movie, what I liked so much is that you list all those Kickstarters who initially contributed.
1,800 people.
That's so huge.
Yeah, so they all made the film. At some level, they're executive producers at some level.
Yeah, that's really cool and special for Bethany's fans to be part of her film.
Yeah.
And all of those people are going to go see the movie, so that was really smart too. There were times, so you thought it was just going to be a 15-minute film, and then there was a point where you're like, no, this film is like a Hollywood film. It deserves to be as big as Soul Surfer was, which was, Helen Hunt played her mom. There was
Dennis Quaid.
Dennis Quaid was her dad.
Anna
Sophia Robb was Bethany.
Carrie Underwood.
Carrie Underwood? Oh yeah, Carrie Underwood was in it. There was a huge cast of characters in Soul Surfer. I have little neighbors, and Bethany had given me a signed poster, and I one day brought it over to my neighbor, and she started crying. She's 8 years old, and she was just like, I love Bethany, and that's kind of the reaction people get when they see Bethany. They're obsessed, and they watch Soul Surfer 100 times, and the people are super fans.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So why do you decide to make it a Hollywood movie rather than just this 15-minute movie?
Well, so it was in the middle of the Kickstarter. We're raising this money. Here we go. All right. We're the period of fundraising is about a week done, and Bethany's not texting me back or calling me. I'm like, what's going on? Is she mad at me? What's happening? And then I get a call from her assistant Becky, Adam, and Bethany, and they call me and Bethany's pregnant. And it was just silent like that. And Adam's speaking, not Bethany.
Adam's her husband.
Yeah, Adam Dirks, Bethany's husband. And so, obviously, like, I didn't know that was coming, so I just congratulated them and was super excited. And Bethany didn't talk the entire phone call because she wasn't ready to have a kid, which we address in the film. And so I just told them, you know, take 2 weeks, figure out if you want, I can take the footage I have and make something awesome. We'll give all the money back to Kickstarter and you can take your life in that direction, you know, whatever you want to do. So 2 weeks passed and she hit me up. She called me and she's like, let's keep going, let's do this. So that was the pivot point where I was like, okay, I don't know what this movie's going to be, but I know I need to follow her pregnancy now. And this is going to be a much longer film than I originally
It's going to have to go at least 9 months.
At least 9 months. Wait, no, but longer than that because
yeah, she has to have a baby.
She has to have the kid, and then so now it's at least a 2.5 year project, minimum. And yeah, so I just kind of like, my sister had gotten pregnant just before her, so I was able to kind of like anticipate the emotional journey that she was going to go on.
Well, that's cool. And, so you understood.
Yeah, and I got some experience holding a kid before her kid, which is cool. So yeah, so I flew out to Kauai and checked in with her every trimester, basically. And yeah, and just kind of documented all that. And so yeah, that was the pivot point where we're like, okay, so to answer the question more though, like the quote unquote Hollywood film, first of all, I think Hollywood films of people tend to be terrible.
At least you're honest.
Yeah, I mean, they're good in that they think they do check the box of like getting through a good message, but they end up being cheesy and not factual. So my goal was to make something that would scale and be as impactful, but also be true, authentic, and just emotionally deep. And so as the story developed, I kind of would check off these different boxes in my head of things I was looking for. And finally, in September of 2016, I had my own personal meltdown, like, oh my gosh, I have all this amazing footage. I'm not equipped to make this movie by myself. And so I set out to find support in the team, and that's what I did. I met with like 10 different production companies who were all male, and through that process was looking across the table at other white men going, these guys are gonna, like, how is their perspective any different from mine? And then I met, through a friend, Alice Gu, met this lady, Carol Martori. She's got 20 years of experience editing documentaries. And you meet her, I met her, and she just had this presence about her that was just super special. And within the first 5 minutes of meeting her, I was like, oh yeah, I want to work with her. And then right after that meeting, I met my producer, Penny Edmondson, who then brought in her friend, Jane Kelly Kosek. And yeah, so I built an all-women support crew to make the movie, and that was the best decision I could have made, for sure.
Yeah, I kind of remember during that phase. At one point you were like, can you help me with writing? And I was like, I like write. No. I did, that wasn't my specialty, but these women aren't like super young. They're professionals that have been doing it for a while. They're seasoned. Yeah,
they're both like, I think everyone's twice my age. So yeah, they've been around forever. So that was what I would say, that would be the Hollywood aspect of the movie. So I'm like, okay, I understand surfing, I'm core within that space, and I understand her story, but I need help making sure that I check a bunch of other boxes for the narrative arc, and having them, and also just riding the wave of like, who do you speak to get into a film festival, or there's so many things that you have to do and hurdles, and I needed help, but I wanted to make sure it was coming from a space that would feel like Bethany, and so women were super important in that.
That's great that you found them, and I like that you worked with women that were older than you. You know, I think there's this saying that Jim Rohn said, you know, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with, and you've always been about finding people that are better than you. You know, some people like to work with people that they can be the boss to, and that are like less skilled than them.
Yeah.
I've never had much success doing that. I always like working with people better than me. It means you have to pay them, but it's hard.
Yeah.
But that's a really good, I mean, any other tactics and lessons that just sort of mindsets that you have that you used when you found the team and made this film?
Yeah, I mean, well, just to speak to that point a bit, what's the point in working with people that aren't as good as you? That doesn't make any sense. So finding what you're good at, and then okay, that's what you're going to be good at, and then what are you bad at, and making sure you're hiring people that are better at you at those spaces. So you still want to be good at something, because obviously we all have an ego to feed at some level. So I still feel like I can edit, I can, write a little bit, I can produce, I can do all these things, but I know I'm not going to be really good at all of them at the same time. So my lead editor runs a circle around me when it comes to editing, right? But I still know what I want, and so to be able to have that creative freedom to kind of spar with her was so fun. Like we had so much fun, like sparring, what I would call sparring ideas, but always never like in a negative way. It was just like, it was fun. Like, like she's like, I would consider her one of my like best friends now.
That's so cool.
And so, having that, I would really encourage everybody to try to like, if they're starting off making films or podcasts or whatever they're doing, learn all the different jobs and then hire people that are better than them than you. That's the only way you're going to make a good project.
So hiring people that are better than you, though, takes resources and an investment. And that's the part that I tend to be a little like cheap. Like I don't want to say it. Like it's hard for me to like go into my bank account and just shell out tons of money, but I've done it before and it works. But it's hard. And I want to talk to you a little bit about raising money, because there was one point where I actually got involved with you and dipped my toes into like, do I want to be an agent? Do I want to like be a sponsor agent? And we went and met with Samsung, who was like this big cell phone company, and they had tons of money, and they were like, you're asking for too little. The guy was like kind of late to show up to the meeting. It was super intimidating in LA, and he just kind of laughed at how much we were asking for. And then it was going to be like no problem to get that amount of money, and then their cell phones like blew up the next week, and we never heard from the guy again.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Yeah, their phones got catching on fire, and they went into damage control.
And I was like, oh, I can't. And then there was another company that was like a makeup company, and they wanted to do a full line with Bethenny, and they flew out and met with her, and it was just like such a trip. We even stopped to get frozen yogurt one time, and like Bethenny got mobbed just at the frozen yogurt place. But just asking for those dollars, I think one of the things I learned is I was like, wow, it's the same amount of energy to ask for $500 as it is to ask for $50,000, $500,000. Like just depending on who you're talking to. Yeah. What did you learn from fundraising? And
well, what I learned is like is not like, there's obviously what you need, but trying to figure out what the other person's gonna gain, whether it's a company or a private investor. That's the most important. So you want to sell your story in the shortest period of words possible and what you need, and then talk about them the rest of the time.
That's the key to pitching. It's like dating. You want to like make it about them and make it be beneficial to both parties. You can't be needy.
Yeah, I think the one challenge I really had is Bethany's very particular on who she'll partner with. She won't do any type of product that's got sugar in it. All these different issues, right? So
it's like the huge beverage companies were probably throwing money at you and you had to say no.
Exactly, yeah. So there's two sides to it. Like part of it's like, dang it, like I could have, this could have been so much easier. But then like but like that's who Bethenny is, right? And so, she wants to be true to so many different things, and that's rare to find in this world. So, challenge accepted. And so we went and we ended up, Kickstarter and Corksicle and Rip Curl got us through the filming, and then post-production I went and found private equity, and built an LLC and just did it all professionally at that point. And so that ended up being the route we had to take in order to kind of cross the finish line.
That's great. What was it like seeing the film on the big screen for the first time?
I remember, so I got Dolby Digital to sponsor the film, and so the first time I really saw it on a big screen kind of done was up at their headquarters, and I just felt like I was going to vomit. It was so nerve-wracking because you're in this like brand new state-of-the-art facility with 10 executives, and they're all watching the movie for the first time after it's been mixed, and it was just very nerve-wracking, but we did a feedback screening at Red Studios. It was a 2-hour film at that point. They let us use their facility, and we brought in producers and editors that were all of Hollywood and narrative backgrounds to give us feedback. And So that was like, I guess, the real first time. But I didn't have any expectations. The first time, okay, so in that space, actually the whole time I'm like, this movie's so bad, like pretty much for like 2 hours. I'm like, oh, it's so cringeworthy, right? Like, you just don't know how people are gonna take it. And then people really loved the 2-hour cut, which was cool. And our feedback was there wasn't much. We just needed to figure out how to get it from 2 hours and 90 minutes, which was painful, but we did it. But yeah, I have, it's like, sometimes in these experiences are outer body experiences, like, it's you doing it, but sometimes it doesn't feel like you. And so...
Tell me more.
Yeah, it's like...
Do you have like a creative angel that comes through to you? Because
yeah.
I believe in that.
Yeah, well, a bit of that for sure. I think it's just out of body in the sense of like, I didn't even know I was capable maybe of doing this film at this scale. Like, I listened to the podcast with Jimmy Chin and his wife, and I'm like, man, they're so well spoken, and like they just seem like they like know what they're doing. And I honestly didn't know what I was doing. I just figured it out. But what I've learned, I guess, to like tie the outer body experience is I have this like inner feeling, and I don't necessarily know. I just go where my heart and my soul kind of, okay, this person seems like the right person, or this one doesn't. So there's this like, as I listen to these other filmmakers who are seasoned, they speak in this way. I'm like, I did that, but I didn't know I was doing it. I wasn't educated in that way because I have no filmmaking background. But they made these certain choices in the film, and I was like, oh, I actually made those same choices, but I just did it because I felt like it was the right thing to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's your intuition.
It was my intuition, yeah. So that's where it's outer body, because I'm like, I don't even remember, how did I make all these decisions? Like, like looking back, I'm like, did I do that? It's kind of weird at some level, if that makes...
No, it makes total sense. When I hang out with you, I always feel like you are really good at making decisions and choosing very carefully who you work with and who you don't, and who you respect and who you just don't. It's not like you disrespect anybody, but you're like, I just don't care for that person. Like, if they're negative, they're not in your life.
Yeah.
I remember asking about someone who I thought was very famous in the surf industry, but I was like, he makes a living like just being kind of snarky. And you're like, yeah, I just don't want anything to do with that. That's fine if that's how he wants to make a living, but I don't know. So you have all these like tactics, and you must listen to, you listen to podcasts, you read books. I know your family has been just really inspirational to you, but...
Yeah, constantly listening to podcasts. I'm not the best reader, I'll admit that, but flying, TED Radio Hour is amazing.
You turned me on to that. Okay,
yeah.
TED Radio, what else? Give us some...
Yeah, well, TED Radio Hour was actually probably the number one thing I listened to while making Bethanys film, and it was like getting a master's degree in life. And so there's all these people and all these stories of challenges and overcoming and triumph and, and success and failure. They just do a really good job curating ideas. And so I could listen to those ideas and these different struggles and apply that kind of insight and knowledge to what I was doing, even if it was totally different, I still was able to extrapolate. And now I'm kind of on to more different podcasts, but during the making of the film, I would definitely say that was the podcast that really gave me a lot of insight into so many different things, because I'm like, I'm not that seasoned of a human, I'm pretty young, and I haven't really gone through that many trials. So how can I like get some information? And that show, that's all it's about really, is these people that have like scientists and people that have fled, countries to find their own success or whatever it may be. And through that, like Tony Robbins and all these different types of people really have these pointed thoughts, and they curate those ideas from years and years of experience. And so that's where I kind of pulled my inspiration, I think, for decision making. And then to be honest, I just call my mom. I'm like, Mom, I'm not sure about X, Y, and Z. What do you think? And she's usually 99% of the time she's right.
What does your mom do for work?
So my mom teaches ESL, English as a second language, and then she taught art. But because my grandma, her mom was a politician and did that space, my mom's been in the room and helped my grandma for years and years and years, right? So the things you apply to politics, you apply to life. And so whether it's filmmaking or whatever it is you might want to do, there is a certain tack and a reason why you do things. And yeah, And so having her as a resource and my dad, I mean, both of them always, you know, they're just older. So, and then you pull back the layers more, like Shane Besham was a big resource for me, understanding where to go, swell. So it's always like, hey, I have this, Bethenny trusts me. Great, check, cool. Now I need to trust myself, and building the resources around myself to make sure I was able to check the boxes and get to the finish line.
It's so crazy because now Bethenny, I mean, she's grown so much since the making of the film. She's a mom of 2 boys now. She's 2 kids. And, you know, Adam has grown. He's written a book, her husband. And, you know, they had done The Amazing Race together. They got married pretty quick. And you see it all in the film. What did she think when she saw it?
Oh, she loves it. Yeah, it's just like...
What was it like watching her watch it? Were you there?
Yeah. So the first time she came to my house and we did the first 15 minutes of the film, and she sat like this with her hand blocking her eyes because she didn't want to, she was like trying not to let me watch because she knew I was watching her, you know? And, but then once we got through some of the tougher scenes, it got into her and Adam and stuff, and it's just like, kind of the coolest thing ever to be able to see your relationship grow with somebody and see your kid like running around. And so she really loved all that stuff for sure. I think it's interesting too though with with Bethanys' relationship, like as I kind of had a camera in her face all the time, I definitely like would find her trying to peek into my life as well. Like,
asking about girls and
stuff. Just who is this guy, you know, like making sure I was the person that she thought I was, you know. So there was definitely some back and forth on that, which was hilarious. But yeah, it was so fun, and what a like honor to have that, to let anybody, you know, it's not easy to open your life up to a kind of semi-stranger and let them tell your story. And she's such a massive figure to so many people. But I always just kind of told her, I was like, hey, this film is for you, to showcase yourself in a way that's super dynamic, and if you don't like something, we'll talk about it, and if you really 100% can't be in the film, then we'll take it out. And so I always would remind her, and that's the truth. We stuck to that all the way through. So, you know, I just don't think it's fair. I also want to tell my intention as a filmmaker is to try to tell heroes' stories while they're alive. You know, I loved Shane McConkey's film, but like how cool would it have been if that story was told while he was still here. And so, yeah, like to have that ability to work with her, but then letting her dive into it. And then now watching the feedback, all these young girls love the story. And part of the reason why they love it is because Bethany's fingerprints are all over it. It was my best ability to let her tell her own story.
I just love the interplay between Bethenny as a kid, her family, and Bethenny as an adult. I mean, she's beautiful, and she's always been beautiful, but inside and out. And she's just a badass. Like, she charges. I'm not going to give away the end scene, because the end scene, I was there for it, but I was so excited because I'm in the boat, and I just remember her jumping off, and I could hear in the movie me say, "Go, Bethenny!" It was so exciting watching it.
I'm so glad that again, that's another intuition thing. I knew I needed somebody to come and be who you were in that space. And imagine if you weren't there, we wouldn't have had a female voice in that scene, right? Like, there's these things that like I didn't know they were so important till later, but I knew they were important, if that makes sense. So again, intuition.
And I just felt like I was like a total like obstacle on the bus around the boat, just because I was like an extra person and there's only so many people who can go. But that's good to hear. It was just so crazy to watch her in the final scene. You'll just have to watch the movie to watch it. I mean, there's already clips everywhere. You know, you kind of know what happens, but like I'm there watching her, and it's just like the waves that she's in are terrifying for anybody.
Yeah.
And then you just watch Bethenny, and then there was all sorts of footage that I didn't even know happened. That was really cool as well.
I think one of the best things I heard post Jaws was from Greg Long, who's a big wave, you know, surfer and champ and just legend. And he just said, he said when Bethenny showed up, you know, Shane Dorian and Ian Walsh and Greg Long and all the best big wave surfers are out surfing. And he said, we got out of the water to watch the Bethany Hamilton show. And he said he's never seen anybody show up and surf the wave so gracefully and take the lines that she took first time at that level. And so he was just all these guys were so blown away by her skill set, and she's smiling the whole time, which is kind of weird.
And then she wanted to go back and like was bummed that she didn't take any on the head. I was
Yeah.
like, are you a masochist? Like, she is cut from a different cloth for sure.
She's her level, her pain tolerance level, and her willingness to want to put herself in a critical position on waves. She has that X factor that you're looking for with any like top level athlete. It's something you can't describe. They just have that thing.
Yeah, and you can tell she had it since she was a kid. So the film hits theaters when?
So the film hits theaters July 12th. It'll be in about 150 to 200 theaters nationwide. And
cool.
I really hope people show up and take their friends, and I hope, dads take their daughters and mom take their daughters, and really like young men. I mean, there's a story for everybody. Adam being a stay-at-home dad, I think, is a really key element to the story, and kind of a modern twist on, being a parent and that relationship. And so there's a lot for everybody, and it's a good family-friendly movie. It's PG.
It is PG.
Yeah.
But it's so good.
Yeah. So it's PG. I mean, realistically, just because there's pregnancy and some life stuff. So other than that, and a lot of her fans, or Bethany fans that have seen the film, said they like it more than Soul Surfer because it's really her. And so I really hope people show up and get to experience Bethany for Bethany.
It's awesome. I definitely teared up in the movie. It made me cried. I didn't expect that. It was so good. I can't wait to see it in on the big screen, not just on my little computer screen or TV monitor. But where can people see it? Like, how do we?
Yeah, so if you go to unstoppablethefilm.com, there'll be a theater listing, and then as it gets closer, Fandango, you'll be able to just type in your zip code and it'll show you the theater nearest you.
Awesome.
So Fandango and all those ticket websites. So it'll be in like AMC's and Regals, as well as maybe some smaller theaters, but it'll be in a lot of major chains. And the one thing I will note is because Dolby sponsored the film, like the sound design is so amazing, and our composer Chris Bowers, he did Green Book, which won Best Film.
That was your composer?
Yeah.
That was the best. They had the best music.
Thanks. Yeah. So our composer is this really talented kid. Well, he's just turned 30, but Chris Bowers, he did Kobe Bryant's film. He went to Juilliard.
Yeah.
This kid, he worked with Kanye West and Jay-Z on Watch the Throne album. This kid's like just so talented. So he was flying to Atlanta and shooting, because his hands are actually playing the piano in Green Book. And then he was flying back and doing my film as well as a few others.
Wow.
But yeah, so the 90 minutes of original music, and our sound designer had just finished working on Black Panther. So, I really tried to check the boxes to make this film bigger than a documentary, but still feel like a documentary. So there's like we call it like a feature-mentary.
A feature-mentary. Yeah, it's so good. I can't wait for people to see it. I was really excited to see it. What's next for you? Because, I mean, you've never had this happen to you before, so in 2 weeks, I feel like your life's going to change. Like, by the time this podcast comes out, your life's going to change, too.
I mean, I don't see past that horizon like
You're like
you do.
day by day.
Yeah, I'm day by day. Right now, I still am just focused on making sure that people show up and see it, and it does well. So many filmmakers are on to their next film, and I think maybe later in my career I'll be more like them. But this is my first time, I would say, considering myself a real filmmaker. So I want to just enjoy the experience and not get too far down the road and be present.
Well, I'm really excited for it. Any just parting advice to people listening who want to be filmmakers or just want to do something so they have to be unstoppable to do it?
Yeah, I think just remembering that no matter how big or small the idea is, to take baby steps and to not give up. And if you really love it, just remind yourself, oh yeah, I'm doing this because I love it. If you don't love it, like, don't do it. And if you're getting into the game to like make a bunch of money and get rich, like, you probably should pick something else. So I think you have choices. You can live $1 million lifestyle and work on Wall Street, or sorry, you can move to Wall Street and make $1 million or more, or you can kind of pursue your passion and live this lifestyle that's like really fulfilling. So my advice is to just take baby steps. Bethanys film, if I would have, it's been 6 years right now.
How did you keep your patience for 6 years?
Yeah, but I loved it, So like I would still do commercial jobs and all these things through the time. So it was just one of those things. A lot of people ask me, like, how are you so motivated about this one idea? And it's like, well, the idea just keeps getting bigger, so it stays exciting. And it's really hard. Again, intuition. It's really hard to like, at those different moments through making the film, to look at you or look at anybody and really explain what I knew in my head in a way that like would be rational. So you have to be a little irrational to make documentaries. You have to be a little bit crazy, right? You're taking a giant risk with no idea of where it's gonna go. So I guess the advice is just to, again, baby steps. Like, okay, I'm gonna film this little bit and I'll have this footage, and then cool. And then I need, so just getting down the road with those little things. And there's just so many tutorials online. Like, be a student of the game. I am always learning, whether it's listening to a podcast to stimulate my mind, or researching the new camera, or there's so many other people that are better at cinematography than I am, that are better at editing, and I'm always like getting inspired by those people, and watching more long form narrative films and stories and trying to apply that to a documentary. And there's clear story arcs that have worked through history of time, and you can go and look at those, and if you apply those points in your story will be that much more dynamic. So just have fun with it and keep going.
Awesome. So Aaron, where can people find more about you? So there's Unstoppable, the movie.
Yeah.
Then
I have a website, lieberfilms.com, or just at lieberfilms on Instagram, and it's Lieber.
Awesome. All right, that was an awesome interview.
Cool.
You killed it. Woo! We're gonna turn this off so we can talk.
Thanks. Oh my